Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. A state of siege tension remains high in Haiti following the assassination of the country's president, Jovenel Moise. Reactions this afternoon to the developments in Haiti, the Prime Minister and the opposition leader among those weighing in. And later in sports, the Reggae Boys now know their final opponent in the group stages of the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I am Vashon Brown. Here are the details. Tension remains high in Haiti this afternoon following the assassination of the country's president, Jovenel Moise. It happened at his private residence early this morning. Now, Sandy Williams has been tracking this story for us and now joins us live. Sandy.
Well, Vashon, the interim Prime Minister the interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph has since declared a state of siege in Haiti in a message to the nation. Mr. Joseph says he does not want the nation to plunge into chaos following the assassination of President Moise. So what exactly does that mean? A state of siege means that all borders are closed as well as martial law temporarily imposed with Haiti's military and the Haiti National Police empowered to enforce the law. About 1 o'clock this morning, armed men carried out an attack at the residence of President Jovenel Moise. Moise was 53.
I am hearing that some Colombian and Venezuelan commandos posing as DEA attacked their home and shot them. The president died on the spot, and his wife was taken to hospital where she succumbed 3 hours later to gunshot wounds.
President of the Haiti Jamaica Society, Midday Sports, says prior to the assassination, Haiti had been unstable for some time.
There has been a lot of political tension since 2018, and things got worse on the 7th of February 2021 when the president's term ended, but he claimed that he still had another year and refused to step down. There have been a lot of marches for the past few years asking the president to step down, even before his term ended. And of course, he has refused to do so.
Midday Sports says as news of the president's murder spread, tension across Haiti. Haiti was scheduled to hold general elections later this year, even though many were against the move.
Nobody trusted that this was going to be a fair, credible election. But the administration was insisting that the election would take place no matter what, no matter how many people were against it, no matter how many people demonstrated.
Now there is worry that the incident may spark a civil war.
It's a very tense moment. What we are praying, not only praying, but working towards is to ensure that it doesn't descend into civil war. Because as I said, the civil war was brewing for a long time because of all these circumstances that I just explained. And now that's what we have to be careful, that either the U.S. or the UN doesn't use this as an excuse to send another occupation force as we had up to 2017 for about 15 years, and which turned out to be a catastrophic experience.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
Now, First Lady Martine Moise was badly injured in the attack and is being treated at hospital. Now, earlier Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith said Madame Moise had died. However, Haitian media are now reporting that she is alive and may be flown out for treatment. Now, back home, there have been reactions to the Haitian president's assassination. The Prime Minister, the opposition leader, as well as the Foreign Affairs Minister and her opposition counterpart are all speaking out.
In a tweet this morning, Prime Minister Andrew Holness called the news of the assassination of Jovenel Moise shocking and tragic. He says he's met and spoken with President Moise many times, and in all his interactions with him, particularly within the context of CARICOM, he found him to be a man committed to seeing Haiti take her place in the world. Mr. Holness says this is a dark time in Haiti's history. Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith reacted to the development at this morning's post-cabinet press briefing.
Jamaica wishes to reiterate its solidarity and support to our sister country, to our neighbor, to our fellow CARICOM country and its people at this terrible time. as well as to members of the Haitian community who currently reside in Jamaica. All of us in the region have been closely watching the developments in our sister country, Haiti, and we have been offering our support and best wishes for their return to peace and stability.
Both the opposition leader Mark Golding and the opposition spokesperson on foreign affairs Lisa Hanna have commented on the matter. They noted that the incident has cast a dark cloud over the region. But there have been concerns that CARICOM and Jamaica have had negligible influence on the political unrest in Haiti. Senator Johnson Smith says CARICOM has been watching the developments in Haiti closely.
In fact, the matter of Haiti was very much on the agenda of heads who met on Monday and Tuesday of this week. And indeed, President Moise was to join us yesterday morning for discussions in respect of reports which had been conducted, and including the OAS contingent that had gone. CARICOM had a representative on that mission that had recently gone to Haiti and had completed its report. We also had commissioned a CARICOM experts report, which had been presented to heads yesterday. These matters were considered in caucus because of their sensitivity. President Moise was to have joined us yesterday morning and was detained by other matters.
And there are also reactions from leaders across the globe since news broke overnight of the assassination of the Haitian President Jovenel Moise. For the details, we now turn to the CNN.
On Tuesday, over 16,000 students attended face-to-face classes, while 23,203 did their classes online. Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Casson Troop says, based on the ministry's assessment, recommendations were made for 58,000 students to do face-to-face classes. Dr. Troop says the barriers have been removed for the 120,000 students who were having challenges.
And we do apologize for the incorrect insert there. Now, the Organization of American States, OAS, General Secretariat says the killing of Mr. Moise is an affront against the entire community of democratic nations it represents. The OAS, in a statement, said political assassinations have no place in a democracy. Now, it called for an end to an irresponsible policy that risks undermining democratic gains and the future of the country. And we now go back to that story where we have reactions from leaders across the globe.
Well, what we know is from the statement put out by the acting prime minister in Haiti, from which we learn rather that it was overnight about 1 a.m. in his private residence that he and his wife were attacked by a group of men, some of whom were speaking Spanish. Jovenel Moise has been killed, we now know, according to that statement by the acting prime minister. His wife shot and has not yet been killed, but we know has been shot as a result of the incident. It is an extremely shocking development, of course, that a president should be shot like that overnight, but it comes, of course, in the context of a country that has been particularly chaotic these last few years, almost from his entry into office in 2017. Jovenel Moise's power has been contested. There have been regular demonstrations recently. The cost of living has risen hugely, and there's been a political crisis that has engulfed his government now for many months. So big news now from Haiti. The big question is what happens next. What's interesting in the statement that we got from the acting prime minister was in his insistence on the fact that despite this assassination of the president overnight, the forces of law and order remain firmly in control. And of course, that is a reminder in itself of how unstable this country is. We've seen gang violence rise. We've seen a political crisis now that's gone on for months. Streets that have been taken over by demonstrators several times. The big question is now, as Haiti wakes up this morning to this news, how stable and how secure that continues to be.
In other news now, the Ministry of Education is insisting that it has adequate teachers to participate in the National Summer School Program. Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Casson Troop made the disclosure while speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica, its morning time program today. Shamela Pullen has that report.
On Tuesday, over 16,000 students attended face-to-face classes, while 23,203 did their classes online. Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Casson Troop says, based on the ministry's assessment, recommendations were made for 58,000 students to do face-to-face classes. Dr. Troop says the barriers have been removed for the 120,000 students who were having challenges in the online world to access learning. So she's hoping those numbers for face-to-face will improve in the coming days.
But the context is a little different. It's not online. We have students who are able to be online, and they will continue to do so. As I indicated, that opportunity is growing every day by the minute. But access is what is important. While we were going through the pandemic, students were limited in terms of the access to their school plans because we were managing the pandemic. You would have seen that the protocols have been relaxed a little bit, so the context is a little different. Now we have access to the physical plant.
So does the ministry have adequate teachers to participate in the program? Dr. Troop says that's not an issue. She says the plan was to pull for retired teachers, but the ministry does not have to do this at this time because it has seen 5,500 teachers sign up for the program.
We have seen 5,500 teachers registered, and we used yesterday about 1,600 of those teachers in the field yesterday. So the demand is not so high yet for those, but we have persons indicating their interest, and we also have access to the assistant tutors who are the final year teachers coming out of our colleges who are going to be recruited for September in the regular school system. So this is good exposure for them as well.
Meanwhile, Dr. Troop says as for September, when the new school year begins, the ministry is still uncertain as to what will happen based on the pandemic. However, her team is getting prepared for what is to come.
We have very different models of operation where we can have full face-to-face for all. We have models of operation where we can use a rotational approach where some will be in today, some will be out, and they rotate the following day. You know, we have models of operation where we'll see the flip classroom where others can be physically there and others can be in a space, but they're all sharing the same lecturer at the same time. So it's a new world. What I have to do with my team level is to get them prepared so our students will have equal opportunities of learning come September.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
And it's now time for a break, but please stay with us. More local stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Joint Select Committee, which reviewed the sexual harassment bill, has recommended changes to the time frame within which victims can make complaints. Now, there was controversy over the 12-month period which was initially proposed. Gender Minister Olivia Grange says the committee has now recommended that victims be given up to 6 years.
6 meetings and several submissions later, the start of debate on a report from a committee which reviewed the proposed sexual harassment law. One of the controversial issues throughout the meetings related to the time frame victims were given to make complaints. Gender Affairs Minister Olivia Grange told Parliament the committee's recommendation.
The limitation of action was the subject of frequent debate in the initial stages of the bill. Having considered all contending views, the committee agreed that the time limit allowed for the reporting of sexual harassment cases should be 6 years and not 12 months. And you know that was a very controversial matter. Further, the committee recommends that the tribunal be empowered to enlarge time, which means granting permission to a complainant who complains out of time to bring his or her matter to the tribunal.
As for the categories of people who can be harassed, the committee also made recommendations.
After much deliberation, your committee agreed to widen the categories that can be sexually harassed. The committee agreed that sexual harassment can be perpetuated by clients, from one student to another, and that employers can be harassed by employees.
For Southwest St. Andrew MP Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, Parliament must send a strong message that violence against women will not be tolerated.
We have a duty when we pass laws to protect victims, that when those individuals that are close to us and associated with us are also found to be in breach, that we will stand without quivering, without cowering, without any equivocation and say wrong is wrong. Madam Speaker, I must say, we do not, at this point, I believe, have the moral authority to others who would call us hypocrites.
The changes to the bill proposed by the Joint Select Committee should be debated next week.
52 new cases of the coronavirus were confirmed on Tuesday. The country's overall case count is now 50,456. The positivity rate now stands at 9.6%. 5 new deaths were recorded, pushing the death toll to 1,101. In the meantime, 115 persons are hospitalized with a respiratory illness. 11 are critically ill. There are 14,228 active cases of COVID-19 in Jamaica. 2 men were shot and killed in St. Elizabeth last night, and 2 others remain in serious but stable condition at hospital. The dead men have been identified as 30-year-old Danworth Tiop and 33-year-old Fabian Medley from Elim in the parish. It's reported that minutes after 10, the men were at a party when a black Toyota Vox drove up and fired shot in the direction of the 4 men who were standing along the road. Now, the vehicle then sped off. Both Mr. Tiop and Mr. Medley's mothers say they saw their sons minutes before they died. The families are distraught.
I'm calling phone, and when I call the phone ring without answer. I say, all right then, I go lie down, and then look more, I call him back again. And I hold him with a call back, and he see the missed call. And then, just as I go lie down, so I get a call from Mr. White, telling me, saying, yes, they just shoot my son at town shift. And he just run out of the house, same time with the ball, and go around there. When we go up and go around this party and get the shot, I see him lie down, and get the shot in her head.
Yesterday evening about 4:30, that was the last. It's about a cook and he eating dinner and he bathe and then he leave because mostly hear him. And we have partying, go away with partying friend in there, and about 9 o'clock somebody came and tell me, in shooting. But all I'm saying, may God help those gunmen. Just God, I don't know, but...
A regional leader in climate change awareness. That's how the president of the upcoming European Climate Change Conference, COP26, hailed Jamaica during a visit this week. Now, the visit comes ahead of the COP26 climate change meeting in November this year.
As president of the conference of the party's COP26, British politician Alok Sharma says he has been visiting several countries, hearing the input of other leaders on climate change. Mr. Sharma met with Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Foreign Affairs Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, and Environment and Climate Change Minister Pernell Charles Jr. on Tuesday.
Jamaica was the first in the region to set out its plans last year in terms of cutting its emissions by 2030. In fact, it's one of the first countries in the world that came forward with those revised plans for its NDC in terms of cutting emissions. I think that's very positive. From the discussions that I've had with Minister Charles and from the discussions I had with the Prime Minister, there is very clearly a recognition that action needs to be taken.
The conference in Glasgow, which was to be held last year, was postponed to November 2021 because of the coronavirus pandemic. It's believed to be one of the most important climate change conferences after the Paris Agreement of 2015, where every country agreed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees and to make money available to support the goal. A 5-year report is expected this year. Mr. Sharma says it's even more critical as more groups have become aware of the issues.
We're very encouraged yesterday with the discussion we had with climate activists, particularly the younger climate activists, for whom this is a big issue. And you know that for young people, for younger generations, some of those who are asking the questions, for people like my daughters, the decisions that world leaders take now over the next decade are going to have a huge impact on them.
Mr. Sharma was on a 2-day working visit to the island. Cody Barrett, TVJ News.
And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In this evening's health report, we'll take a look at surgery and COVID vaccines.
For patients who have elective surgery, we try to do a COVID test pre-op, and ideally within 24 or 48 hours before surgery, but oftentimes our turnover time for results is a little bit more delayed, so we may have to go 72 hours or even greater in terms of doing your pre-op COVID test. And that gives you a window where the patient may have been negative on the pre-op test, but they may become positive on the day of surgery or the day before surgery. So certainly if I'm to operate on a patient and that patient is fully immunized, then I know that they are less likely to be at risk for one of the major complications.
That's the health report in primetime news this evening. And now for today's healthy living tip. Wear loose-fitting clothing when going to get your vaccine. Stay hydrated. Have a meal before getting the vaccine. And limit intake of alcohol the night before to prepare for your vaccine.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Here's Cody Barrett.
The Business Minute, brought to you by...
I'll never forget how it all started.
TVJ made in Jamaica. They are since 2001.
In business news, following Monday's arrival of the inaugural flight from Switzerland, Director of Tourism Donovan White says the Jamaica Tourist Board, JTB, has been working consistently to attract visitors despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
Last year, during the pandemic, Jamaica and the Tourist Board created more content on the destination than we have ever created any other time in our history. And we did that deliberately because we needed to make sure that as we traverse the pandemic and come out of it, that we were in a position to present Jamaica in a way that would make us and continue to drive that demand forward.
Epley Limited will be issuing 3 classes of preference shares on the Jamaica Stock Exchange this month to raise $1.2 billion in order to refinance existing debt. The offer is priced at $20 per share and will be available for subscription from July 12 to 26. Under the offer, Epley plans to raise $300 million from a preference stock that will pay interest at 5.0% per annum and matures in 2023. Another $500 million from another that will pay interest at 7.25% and becomes due in 2026, and $400 million from a 7.75% stock that matures in 2028. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Barrett.
The Business Minute, brought to you by...
I'll never forget how it all started.
TVJ made in Jamaica. They are since 2001.
We head to a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have your Midday Sports report, and Simon Preston is standing by.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. The Reggae Boys will face Guadeloupe in their second game of the CONCACAF Gold Cup as the French Caribbean island defeated Guatemala on penalties in the qualifiers on Tuesday.
Guadeloupe booked their first appearance in the Gold Cup since 2011 after getting by Guatemala 10-9 on penalties after a 1-1 scoreline in regular and extra time. The Reggae Boys will now face the Guada Boys on July 16 in Orlando. This will follow Jamaica's opener against Suriname on July 12. The Jamaicans will end the group stages on July 20 against Costa Rica. Only the top 2 will advance to the quarterfinals of the competition. Meanwhile, Trinidad and Tobago and Haiti also booked their spots into the Gold Cup after recording wins in the qualifiers on Tuesday. Haiti recorded a 4-1 triumph over Bermuda, while Trinidad and Tobago defeated French Guiana 8-7 on penalties after a 1-1 scoreline in regular and extra time. El Salvador will face Curaçao in the opening game of the Gold Cup on Saturday in Texas.
Across the Atlantic we go now, as England will be looking to reach a major tournament final for the first time since 1966 as they face 1992 winners Denmark in the semi-finals of the European Championship at the Wembley Stadium this afternoon. England got past Germany and Ukraine to get to the last four, while Denmark defeated Wales and the Czech Republic to reach the semi-finals. Kickoff is at 2 o'clock Jamaica time. The winner will face Italy in the final on Sunday. The Italians defeated Spain 4-2 on penalties after a 1-1 scoreline in semi-final 1. And finally this afternoon, that is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Vashan, it is over to you.
So England or Denmark?
I'm going to go with England. Come on, England.
All right, thank you very much. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashan Brown. Don't forget to join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.